Problem with most people is that they don't believe something can happen until it already has. We intercepted a communique from an Indian general saying they were fighting the Rakshasa. Translation, zombies.
The way that this project came about is I believe it was the summer of 2006. The manuscript for, at that time, an unpublished book, World War Z by Max Brooks, was sent to us, and we really responded to it. We thought it was incredibly clever and did something that was potentially very new, which was to take zombies and put them inside of a completely real-world scenario, and also have something of global scale, which felt like an amazing opportunity. And we just fell in love with the project, and luckily for us, Paramount ended up winning kind of an auction for the rights, and that started a long journey of developing screenplays that ultimately progressed to the place where we could make the film.
He wants a what?
Deadly pathogen with a high mortality rate, but curable.
Brad read a draft, and it dawned on him how ambitious it was. And I also think he is someone who appreciates very much living borderlessly, and this movie was a way to understand the geometry of the globe that he appreciates and lives by. And I also think he was really taken with the notion of showing what happens around the world in reaction to a single event and not being localized. It seemed fun and also challenging.
Plan B sent me the book one day, and I didn't know anything about the book, and I just started reading it and thought this was just a great read. Then I called them and said, this is something I'm really interested in, and I want to sit down and have a conversation with you guys about it. So we met and we spoke about it and talked about it, and you know, obviously the book doesn't lend itself to a filmic narrative because of the episodic nature of the book, and it has all these stories within itself.
It's set 10 years after the zombie war has ended, and it is a series of interviews from people in all walks of life who had completely different experiences of this war. And so you get all of these tiny snippets, and it creates a collage of what this experience might have been.
It is an after-action report written for the United Nations about what went wrong, who didn't connect the dots in terms of allowing the zombie virus to get out of control. And what made sense to me in looking at that narrative, which is basically a series of interviews done after the fact, to say, okay, for purposes of a film, what might make sense is to have a character who was that very same investigator trying to figure out what happened during the course of the movie.
It's patient zero from India.
That's the problem. There's so many potential sources in play that no one knows where it began.
Every film is a patient zero, and every virus is a patient zero, and that will tell you how it got started, and I can tell you, therefore, how to stop it. So for me, the great challenge and the opportunity was to take this book and turn it into a detective story.
If we knew where this thing started, then we'd have a chance of developing a vaccine to stop it.
I think Brad is very focused on authenticity and that things feel believable and real and logical. And I also think Mark Forster comes from naturalistic filmmaking, you know, whether it's Monsters Ball or Finding Neverland or his Bond film. So I think he likes to be in reality. I think that's where he also feels very comfortable. So I'd like to think that, you know, the combination of elements, you know, makes the film feel like it's really happening.
I think that the great thing is about Max Brooks' book, he set the book in this very real frame and that sort of framework of reality. And that what really interested me, because I was thinking I wanted to create a movie that feels very real. And you're in a world and feel like this could happen right now, this minute, to any one of us. And you know, a lot of people are living constantly in this fear at this day and age that the world can change any given moment. And you know, we have seen it change. Like, you know, the best example in recent history is obviously 9/11, how everything changed from one moment to the next.
my guys will get you. And you assist the doctor pursuing your leads, my guys will get you out.
I can't leave my family.
The film focuses on Jerry Lane, who is a UN investigator, and you understand that he used to work in these places where, you know, crises exist, but now he sort of retreated more to focus on his family and live a more normal life.
Well, the notion was, what does it feel like if you're in the middle of kind of your everyday goings-on and all of a sudden an enormous thing erupts?
Suddenly, when the cop cuts the mirror off, it's sort of the first beat of tension, and then really everything starts to derail. Because the film for me is not just a zombie movie. It's sort of a global epidemic, a global apocalypse. And that's what the book does as well. And that's why, you know, the title sort of mirrors this global spread, that it's not just really about zombies.
You fought in Zeke yet?
Yeah. Where? Philly, Newark.
What about Houston, Louis?
Baltimore. Atlanta? Guys, I'll be honest with you. I don't know of any place back home that's doing very well.
To work with Brad is incredible because he's the star of the film and he's also the producer. And he's a true artist, and he's someone who has an impeccable taste, and you can see this through his filmography, the projects he chose as an actor and the work he has done. And he's such a sublime and interesting actor, and both of us have never done anything like this. We both had to rise to the occasion and work through this genre, which we both weren't familiar with, but still create something fresh and new.
Okay, come on, guys. Okay, baby doll. Daddy's gotta go to work.
The family is so important because ultimately one of the most important decisions in the film is if he either stays with his family and protects them, or he basically tries to save the world.
If I go, you, the girls, Tommy have a place to stay. If I don't, back in Philly tonight.
It was very important to choose as his wife someone who has a strength, but at the same time has a vulnerability. And I think Mireille Enos has all these qualities, and you know, most people are familiar with her on sort of TV show The Killing, and she came in and did a reading, and I thought her reading was so beautiful because it was so truthful, but at the same time there was a strength and this vulnerability, and she had all the different layers I just saw in that character.
Yeah, everything's okay. I'm okay.
That's the spirit.
I come from a cinema which is character-driven, so that's the cinema I started with. The stories I started telling were always character-driven movies, and that's what I connect with, and what is the character's journey, and how do I connect with that character emotionally. And once I have that, you know, you can go as big as you want because you always remain with that. You have to begin with the character, and then you can explore any world you want.
The question that we have got to address is, what the hell is it?
About 5% of the population aren't affected
immediately.
It is
viral.
It has to be viral. There is no plausible alternative.
We did a ton of research, and what was consistently fascinating to us were notions that kept coming out of science, and in particular, you know, the swarming of birds or the way that animals pass on parasites, and it seemed to lend itself over and over again to a way in which we could talk about the zombies.
We wanted their behavior to resemble things that we associate with organic elements. So whether it's the zombies climbing the wall in Israel in the manner of a kind of an anthill, or other swarm-type behavior, you know, we keep using a grammar about nature and science.
A zombie, in the simplest form, is somebody brought back from the dead. Zombies really appeared in literature in about 1918, 1919. Somebody wrote a book, Zombies in the Cane Field, set in Haiti, where there were many, many rumors about zombies being used as slaves to work the fields. And turns out there's a lot of truth to it. They hadn't really died, but they were drugged in a way that made them seem dead, and then buried, and then taken out very soon. And apparently they had lost a lot of their brain capabilities and just worked as slaves in the field relentlessly. And that is true in the sense that it was reported by many, many people who lived in Haiti, having seen this and witnessed it.
There was a memo sent from this installation 11 days ago. It had the word zombie in it. Do you know anything about it?
Yeah. It was an email, not a memo.
Pretty obvious nobody back home bothered to read it.
What we fear and what fascinates us are reflections of our own insecurities and our own doubts and our own questions about nature and the universe. With the zombie, it is a manifestation of our fear of death. And we are both attracted by that and frightened by that, and therein lay the appeal of zombie movies.
Zombies as we know them began with the George Romero film, Night of the Living Dead, and what the fear at that time of nuclear annihilation or the ramifications of radioactivity and what could happen to you and your body. And today, the different kinds of fears that we have, they're still based on fear. The very specific, whether it's germs and bacteria and viruses, or whether it's radiation from nuclear holocaust, really is a trivial difference. It's still the fear of death.
I became involved with World War Z through Jeremy Kleiner, who was very interested in the biological basis for this film. What I do is I work on zombie ants, a particular system where parasites infect individual ants, worker ants belonging to a colony. And as they infect them, they take over their behavior and make the individuals move away from the rest of the hive, move to some other location, which is exactly the location where the parasite wants to grow and reproduce. And they do this in a very orchestrated manner, and it's one of the most complicated examples of parasite manipulation of host behavior that we yet know. But in thinking about the movie and reading the scripts early on and discussing a lot with Jeremy and the scriptwriter, we explored the different types of manipulation that we see in the natural world. And so what we wanted to do in discussing this was think about the biological basis of manipulation, how behavior can be controlled by one organism, a parasite, to bring about the central thing that parasites need, which is transmission.
Once I saw bitten, turned to 12 seconds. Same here?
5 or 10 minutes.
Where do zombies come from? Do we understand the basis of this? We can think about vampires and werewolves, and we know that they have a biological basis. The rabies virus, which causes mammals to lose control, become aggressive, attack other individuals. We know squarely that the birthplace of a lot of these myths and legends about werewolves and vampires comes from that virus.
There's a single-mindedness to these characters, almost a herd mentality. One leads and the rest follow. Like lemmings, they go, but some survive, so the hunt continues.
From a biologist's perspective, it makes an awful lot of sense, because the virus in an individual body is, to a large extent, genetically identical to the virus in other bodies. And therefore, because they're genetically identical, essentially clones, they should cooperate.
They're actually a lot like a swarm of ants or termites. So, for example, scaling walls is something that ants do all the time. They can't talk to each other. They just use little signals with their neighbors, and out of that collective action emerges this large-scale pattern.
One of the many things a virus or bacteria needs to thrive is a live host.
Functioning circulatory system.
I'm afraid it boils down to one simple fact.
Can't make a dead person sick.
A zombie is an organism who is controlled and has no endpoint on of itself. It's dead. In the case of biological systems, they're reproductively dead.
I think they're spreading a pathogen, and they need a healthy host.
In the movie, we see a goal-directed behavior. When the zombies bite an individual, that individual itself tries to seek out and find more hosts. That's exactly what we see in the natural world. We can see parasites when they infect another individual. That individual itself is trying to pass on copies of the parasite genes. For a biologist interested in diseases, this whole genre of zombies is absolutely fascinating because it describes to us the general concern society has with diseases that come from elsewhere.
The movie like this is a way to just drive home the fact that something new can pop up out of nowhere and spread very quickly. And to that extent, even a movie about zombies trying to take over the world is actually accurate. I think the opening sequence where the zombies first strike is so scary to us because we're reading in the news about emerging diseases. For example, there are viruses emerging from Saudi Arabia or from China where we've never really seen these particular viruses before, and we don't really understand how they work. And people are getting sick and people are dying, and you don't know what you should be doing because these viruses can spread as quickly as the zombies spread. I mean, if someone is sick and gets on a plane, they can be in another country, on another continent in a matter of hours. That's how real viruses spread around the world. And so these zombies are spreading kind of like viruses do, and it's very scary.
No, we're not really in Philadelphia. Here we're in the center of Glasgow, sort of the center of town. And Glasgow was generous enough to basically close down the whole part of their center. And we have like several streets here blocked for ourselves to do the opening of the movie. And it's been really exciting to be here because they've been very cooperative. And it really gave us the scale we were looking for. And once you change the street signs and you put some cabs in and you also use some digital plates from Philadelphia, the city really will look like Philadelphia.
Glasgow was kind of an unbelievable discovery as Philadelphia, and largely unfilmed in, so they received us very generously and kind of let us take them over for 2 weeks.
Rolling! We first talked about shooting the sequence in 6 days, and I think then people sat around the table and realized, hang on, this is much more complex, we needed more days. So I approached the council and asked for an 18-day closure of this area, which is enormous. I mean, it's never been done in England before. A city centre shut down for 18 days.
So on background, you start running, when you slightly further up, there's going to be a camera there looking at you.
Simon Crane has been in charge of the second unit direction, and he's got a terrific team around him as well.
I think this is actually Brad.
Mark had a real big passion, for the whole project, and it was really what he wanted to bring was scale. We wanted to do as much practically as possible, but to give a huge scale to the film, and which we're doing.
Get back in your car right now!
In the opening sequence, we have a truck that does some damage to Main High Street.
We've done a lot of stunts where we had a big, like a snow plow mounted on the front of the garbage truck. So as the truck's driving through, you get cars literally flipping around all over the place. One of the things we're trying to do is give it a very documentary kind of style. But on this one, we really want to tie Brad and his family into the action. So what we did, within the Volvo, we actually mounted 4 different cameras which give us an overlapping tile background. And then Brad, we can shoot green screen and actually have him driving and being part of the action.
Brad is a great driver, great mover, great fighter. He'd do it all if he could. And we try and give him as much as we can, because with him doing it, it's great screen value and it looks fantastic.
Brad Pitt is wonderfully generous actor. He brings a lot of laughter onto the set, and you can see that he's always thinking about the story that we're trying to tell and the best way to tell it, and he's always bringing ideas to the set.
And we crashed over 40 different cars. We then crashed the garbage truck, and then we crashed Brad's Volvo into an ambulance.
We've had 150 cars, of which we have crashed, I think, about 80% of them. I think half of the cars have come from America in containers, shipped in, and then they're, of course, not legally allowed to drive on the road. So they all had to be on transporters, getting them into the square, into our enclosure zone.
military are coming in, doing roadblocks, trying to channel everybody away from where all the action is. The main reason I'm here is to go through the script, make sure that they're keeping as realistic as possible. But don't bring them all the way down, stop them at the signs right here, and then we'll go ahead and move them in groups. I'm helping them with the progression of the breakdown in the military to tell the story.
Why don't you take charge of the situation and yell some stuff to him? He yells something.
I trained Mr. Pitt on a film called Spy Games years ago. He's very particular about everything. If I have a National Guardsman here, he wants to know exactly why it's there, what are they doing, why are they doing that, what's the weapon doing, why does he have that weapon? He's very particular about every small detail.
The National Guard have been called out. I think you'll see some of them behind us. We've got M16s, we've got M4s, we've got SWAT teams here with shotguns, we've got MP5s, we've got the police with Glock pistols, and slowly we'll start to see the guns coming into use. But we've been firing a lot of weapons this morning to get the crowd motivated.
In terms of crowds, some days when we're in smaller streets, in the beginning of the sequence, we were getting away with 200 crowd to make the streets look full. And now that we're moving into the square for the mayhem, we're bumping up to 700.
Speed camera. Action! The idea behind the live-action photography with actors and stunt people was have real people on the street that were panicked. Most of the shots have real actors acting like they've been bitten, being taken over, becoming a zombie. Then we intermingled with that certain shots where it was a CG character or a CG herd running across, because now this entire city is being engulfed, starting with a bite and a bite and a bite. Suddenly, you don't know who do you trust. You better just move, because it's nothing but this driving wave of zombies that's coming at you, and it's a mix of computer graphics animation, animated characters, as well as great performance.
Come on, let's go! I think our biggest production challenge was getting the right level of chaos, and yet chaos that can be understood, and having that be with the family and with them enough that you're emotional and connected to them emotionally. And yet also understanding the insane things that are going on around them.
It's a very challenging movie because we have huge crowds. Cut. There are very few scenes where we have two people sitting around a table. It's mostly like hundreds and hundreds of extras every scene and big setups that it's a challenge, but everything we're getting so far is really, really special.
Roll video!
In this particular action sequence, there was a building rooftop created, surrounded by green screen, and when you extract the green, you can replace anything you want. And the nice thing is you can do what would be incredibly dangerous shots otherwise. You can do safe shots with the actors and with the stunt people with this sort of a setup.
One of the things that we see in the movie when faced with this massive pandemic, which is an epidemic on a global scale, is this idea of utility. If you're helpful, we'll keep you as part of the group, and if you're unhelpful, we'll throw you out of the group. This not dissimilar from the large ship that we see floating off into the Atlantic, and that's what happens in the case of the Brad Pitt character.
Can't leave my family.
He may be strong-armed into helping the larger group, but his main interest is in his family.
Each and every one of these people are here because they serve a purpose. Let's figure out how we stop this.
So we're here in the Argus, which is basically a British Navy ship and is standing in for, in the film it's supposed to be an American Navy ship. And it's basically this landing deck we're here on is sort of the landing platform where Jerry and his family all landing down with a chopper after they just escaped the zombies. And they're landing here and sort of like they're in a safe spot. It's sort of like one of the last safe places in the world. It's really great to work on a real aircraft carrier instead of like you're doing it all on stage, because you still get the real feeling. And I feel like always on a real location, it just gives you like a palette that it's much wider, which is really great what we want for this film, because it is World War Z, so the scale is really important.
They had a ship in dry dock, and it's far easier to shoot people on a ship next to a dock where you can get all your equipment and all your people on and off as needed, instead of taking this out to sea and shooting at the whims of the weather. So they just patched in green as needed depending on where the camera is looking, and then you replace all that with the sky that you want and the sea, and helicopters taking off and landing in the background.
Obviously, with the flotilla being as it is and this ship being the center of the flotilla, we've got aircraft arriving, we've got stores being unloaded, the Constitution being taken out of the planes, we've got troops, got all the refugees milling around. It's a very, very busy place.
Good to see you, my friend.
Business worldwide. Is anyone doing better than we are?
This is at an international scale where you have people from all over the world. There must be at least 500 actors who have come on as extras on the set. And it's amazing because then it gives you a real feeling of the magnitude.
Hey, Marka.
Eddie! We're in the bottom of a British naval vessel, and this is a huge space that they have made into this war room. We got so many people working in here with us. I mean, the wardrobe, we've got Navy guys, Marines, we've got the guys decked out in SEAL stuff. We've got all these hard books that they use in the military for laptops. It is like decked out completely.
You all read the same email I did that said zombies.
This boat has become the central office for what is left of the UN, and there's a briefing room where they are trying to gather as much information as possible and then make decisions based on that information.
I want to send you in with the team.
And it's that room in which Jerry gets invited to go on this mission.
Think we're gonna find anything?
Yeah, we're gonna find something. Mother Nature is a serial killer. No one's better.
In the movie, it talks about nature being a serial killer and this idea that death is a common part of the natural world. Of course it is. Many organisms have evolved to take out other organisms. In some cases, it's outright death. They'll kill the host. In other cases, they'll just castrate it. So is nature a serial killer? Yes, absolutely.
I'm good. Who was it? Who fell? Who was it? Who fell? Joking. Need an ammo count and you reload your mags. A boy out there who died. He was 23. 23 years old. Want to tell me why?
Jerry Lane comes to Korea to investigate what could possibly be the origin of the virus. They start sifting through information that they had before, trying to figure out what this is and where it came from, and they come across an email that my character, Captain Speak, had sent. And it's the first known recorded evidence of this virus, the zombies, the Zeke, whatever you want to call them. Nobody knows what it is yet.
One of the incidents happened there, but they don't have more information for him. So he's literally suddenly stranded, that he doesn't know where to go. And he then encounters one of their prisoners there, which is David Morse's character.
You're with the CIA?
But they're not with me.
He shows him that there are different theories that exist, that the North Korean basically pulled all their teeth, because there's no teeth, no bite, no spread.
They pulled the teeth of all 23 million in less than 24 hours.
I mean, essentially what you want to do is you want to break the chain. So however it is that some pathogen is spreading, you want to stop that. Now, in the case of this movie, it's people biting each other. So take out their teeth.
Roll cameras, please.
Why do you have to burn them to ashes to get them to finally stop? Why do they move like a plague? Why is Israel winning?
How's Israel winning?
Well, I tell them that things may not have begun in North Korea, and that there were people who prepared for this before anything happened here in Korea. And Israel is a place where he might want to make his next stop.
I'm going to Jerusalem. I'm your co-pilot.
It was important to me that all the attacks feel different and had different experiences and should have a different impact. And this one in Korea, the idea was that they have to get in a silent way back to their plane, because we established very early that they're drawn by sound. So we chose bicycles, which in one hand you can say, oh, this is ridiculous, but I thought the best way to get back to the plane in the fastest fashion instead of walking.
Just pedal your ass off.
And I thought this entire scene should be backlit at night in the rain, that you only see like silhouettes, and almost that the zombies and the human are both silhouettes, that they almost become one.
I'm gonna clear a path through Z! You paddle like hell!
My character, Captain Speak, can see the ridiculousness in all of this, but he's someone who's just trying to do his job, and it's important to him to get that man on that airplane. If he can do anything, he can do that. And Speak does pay the ultimate price for that. And make sure he meets his end as a human and not as a zombie.
It was very important as we're on this journey that we're going through these different cultures and these different worlds almost. Every place should feel different and every place should have a different palette. It was important in Israel, for instance, to make it warm and feel like everything is safe. Yes, you feel the heat, you feel the warmth, life is as usual, and you feel almost nothing has changed until obviously it does change. The choice of Jerusalem itself, which is the birth of humanity, the birth of all civilization, and then to mirror that in the fall of Israel, which is sort of the end of civilization.
We're shooting in Malta for Jerusalem. Malta has very similar architecture and really is very practical to shoot at. And that's why we chose Malta as a location for Jerusalem.
We started shooting this particular sequence first in the movie. We shot for 3 weeks in Malta. Every day was 1,400 extras, helicopters, cameras, and it was like a constant battling with the elements because there were so many people and creating the frenziness. And the Maltese extras were fantastic, and the costumes had to be made, and all of that was really great.
2 people are working on a hijab. Amazing. This is a Hollywood production. We make many costumes, we source many costumes. The movie was prepped in London, so we have, London has a very big Islamic community, so that was really easy. What we have to source is a lot of the Israeli costumes, which we have to make and source out of Israel straight.
The zombie plague keeps spreading, and we do what we can. These are the Jerusalem Salvation Gates. 2 of 10 portals to the security perimeter into fortified Israel. But Basland is the ingathering place, really. It's just behind the wall, which is supposed to protect the country from the zombies, who are amassing by the tens of thousands outside. And in this wall there are salvation gates through which the refugees who are in zombie territory and who have not yet been attacked and bitten by zombies and therefore turned into zombies, they are allowed in.
You're letting people in.
Every human being we save is one less zombie to fight. The Israelis have decided that there's a common enemy, and they join together in this fight against the zombies. And as you will see, there are Israeli soldiers fighting side by side with Palestinian soldiers. And when you're on the set and you see it, and of course when you see it in film, that's an amazing and very, sometimes a very moving thing to see.
Jürgen Warmbraum, high-ranking official
in the Mossad.
Ludi Boken is actually who plays Warmbrum, and he's not an actor. He's an acquaintance of mine, a friend of mine. And we were in Israel and we were looking for an actor and we couldn't find someone. And coincidentally, I met him in London to discuss something, and he's Israeli. And I was sitting there and looking at him and I said, "Have you ever acted before?" He said, "No, I'm not an actor."
I'm a film director and a film producer, and also because he knew that in the past I had been a war reporter and I've been a lot in the Middle East, not only in Israel where I've lived for a long time, but also in other places, and I've been around people who are like the character that I'm supposed to portray.
And so he went in and he read for the role, and I looked at the tape, and the casting director actually told me, said, "You know, your friend is really good." So I looked at the role and I sent it to Brad and I sent it to the studio, and together I said, "We love this guy, he's so good," and he got the role.
And you were that 10th man.
Precisely. Even before I went for the reading, I understood that it's a big movie, it's an action movie, but it also has a very strong message about solidarity and the way people all unite in a big fight against evil. And I felt that it was something also important to do, and it was something in line with things that I would like to participate in. So here I am.
It was interesting, once he started shooting, suddenly there's this man who has been in a lot of very life and death situations, and suddenly was with Brad Pitt and was slightly nervous and shaking. And I said, "Look, you did so well in the reading, let's just take a deep breath." And then he just found his way and just hold his own and just played his character, which was amazing.
I need answers.
I don't have answers. All you can do is find a way to hide.
They're coming over the top!
The movie was going to be a legitimate representation of a global outbreak and therefore populated by people from around the world. Let's get that right. While you couldn't go shoot Israel for Israel, you could certainly cast an Israeli actress. So we've done that.
I play Segan, which literally means in Hebrew lieutenant, so she's called lieutenant. She's an Israeli soldier for the IDF, and she gets assigned to protect him in this journey.
What I always thought every time I was in Israel is if you see a lot of the kids there in the army, they're very young. And I wanted to choose someone who had a very innocent face. And it's a female, and she has her hair's cut, she almost looks like a young boy, and has this very innocent face, but still is a woman.
It hasn't really been a tough stunt. It's been trying to make the stunts not look like stunts. Trying to make this wave of zombies, this tsunami effect, this complete river rush of zombies, and this domino effect it has on people as they're running, is to get as much real acting out of the performers, stunt-wise, extra-wise, and acting-wise, and just get this performance. We have a few wire assists and, you know, the normal sort of stunt wire rigs, but generally it's getting them to simulate fear.
Jerry Lane sees this little boy that has a shaved head, and this herd of zombies comes vaulting down this walkway, and they part around him just like a wave. You could never get stunt people to quite run this way, where their balance would go in and out in quite the way that would be, frankly, manipulated. So we thought it was best that it be a boy on a ramp with 100% computer graphics, animated zombies running around him.
The zombies are horrifyingly well made. It's like your worst fears and nightmares giving shape and form.
She gets bitten in her hand, and Brad suddenly, out of, again, it's one of these instinctual moments, cuts off her hand and then does a countdown to see if she turns into a zombie, and she doesn't.
That's exactly what happens in rabies. You have a bite on your hand, it takes a lot longer for it to creep up your central nervous system, but creep it does. In the movie, it's a lot quicker, contracted, but in the case of rabies, it's exactly the same process which is happening.
We're not gonna turn! We gotta move.
I'd like to see the mass that we're talking about, because when we're filming it, it's like hundreds of zombies, but with CGI and with everything built together, it's gonna be thousands of them.
The shot going over the wall, that was a big old darn deal. A shot like that takes over a year to make because there's so much difficult animation. You might lay down a basic animation climbing up the wall and they're climbing on one another. And then you sprinkle in all these custom characters and you keep doing that until it looks better and better. And we had one live action shot of zombies hitting the wall and trying to climb up on top of one another. And we did clever camera tricks like lean the wall over, in actual fact, roll the camera over so actually the actors could climb up further than they'd normally do. Then on top of that, we put in a few CG zombies also climbing up on the real people. So it's a mix and match deal again to try and enhance this zombie behavior.
Built the cabin of the plane on a soundstage, and then we basically just shot it in order, like once they boarded the plane to him wrapping up our hand, getting his epiphany, to making the phone call, dealing with the pilots, to ultimately the zombie attack. And you know, the audience knows once the dog starts barking, you know at this point of the movie what's going to happen, but the suspense is still there, how it's going to happen. It's all about the journey in that moment, the journey of suspense.
Mark was very concerned, and is the audience going to understand that there's nothing else that these people could do other than throw a grenade to try and save themselves.
And ultimately the side of the cabin was just rigged for an explosion, for the grenade that can be exploding. That was all shot in camera. You have so much spectacle and so much scope in the first two acts of the movie that we thought it would be really interesting to make it much more intimate and suspenseful. We now know what the zombies are capable of, and now you can't get any bigger and make it even a bigger spectacle, so now you bring it all back to the suspenseful moment between the Z and your hero.
I think these things have a weakness.
And him trying to prove his theory.
I think they're spreading a pathogen, and that pathogen needs a healthy host.
But even if you're right, I mean, infecting the populace with a lethal illness is not exactly a cure.
It's not a cure. It's camouflage.
Jerry pictures us this idea based on what he's witnessed around the world. The idea that these zombies, like all predatory animals, will avoid people who are diseased.
Deadly pathogen with a high mortality rate, but curable.
In nature, these parasites will actually control their hosts to go in certain directions so that they can infect a new host. And there really isn't often a point in trying to infect a host that is already sick.
Do we have what we need to try it?
We have all we could want. Problem is, they're all stored in B-Wing.
What's the matter with B-Wing?
B-Wing is out of bounds. I mean, it's completely taken over by zombies. But in order to engage in this experiment, We have to get him in there and get him out.
Again, you're playing that building very much on suspense. And you constantly want to create suspense around every corner.
Action!
The scene we were shooting today really comes to the climax of the film, and it is the moment when Jerry's theory about how to defeat the zombies is put into practice. And the guinea pig that he uses to try this out on is himself.
He's gonna inject himself.
And he is confronted by a killer zombie. It's just the two of them, and there's no way out.
I casted him specifically, and his name is Michael. He's a theater actor, but he did a lot of pantomime, a lot of movement, and he's just has incredible expression with his face. And I thought that you felt there was a human being once in there, and now it's all gone. He was alive too. He had a life, and that's why I put a wedding ring on him. And it's very subtle, but he bangs sometimes the wedding ring against the window. That you feel like there's a whole history to this man. There was a family, there might have been kids, and now he's just this zombie, and that you feel like the loss of humanity in that moment between them.
What I think this movie does really well is it draws from biological inspiration. Do we imagine, because we see this movie, that there are threats from emerging infectious diseases? Well, that's already a given. 60% of our diseases are from things which have jumped from animals into humans. Of course, we have to go on and ask whether those parasites would be controlling our behavior, but if it's going to kill half of all our society, that itself will control our behavior.
Zombies are often associated with dystopia and, a dark vision of the future. And this film is scary, it's thrilling, it's realistic, but at the end of the day, there's something very optimistic about the ingenuity of human beings.
I'm an optimist, and I always believe there's hope. And that's what I feel Jerry Lane's character is. He's someone who has seen so many places that have been in crises, but ultimately came out of it, and he's still hopeful and positive. How can I solve this? How can I change it? How can we, as human beings, come together and survive? The war isn't over. The plague isn't done yet. We're still battling disease. But now we have found a camouflage. Now there's a way to beat them. Now we can all work together and end this war.
Approaching target, mission to engage. All clear. Line them up. Line them up.
It's not just a horror movie. It touches on many layers of thematic stories. I think it deals with the human story. It deals with political issues. So you will have that cross factor in terms of your audiences who will want to come and watch it because they see it from very different perspectives. Action.
I think the most enjoyable part about filming this movie has been that it's such an environment of collaboration. We show up and we have a scene to do, and we all pitch in to figure out the best way of telling that story. And that's an actor's dream, is to feel like we're all making something together.
I think the biggest challenge of this movie was to stay true to the original ambition of making a great, entertaining, enormous, satisfying, original film. And it's meant to show how the entire world is affected, so by definition, you have to go to a lot of places and show a lot of people.
World War Z is definitely the biggest movie I've ever done. The scale is enormous. It's a worldwide, global journey we're on. And if you make a movie on that scale, you just need to be surrounded with the best people you can who understand the vision you have for the movie and also be able to support that, because ultimately you can't do it alone.
Ready, and action.
And most of them have done big movies, so they were all really incredible support, and I'm really thankful to all of them.